Hello, my name is Olurotimi Osham. I'm continuing with my discussion on the Odyssey, which is, of course, one of the Greek classics. It's a great classic. Is classic. It's typically called by scholars the greatest story ever told. The Odyssey. It's the continuation of Homer's great epics. It follows the Iliad. The Iliad is the story of the Trojan War, and after that, one of the main characters in the Trojan War, that was Odysseus. He's the one who came up with the idea of using a, a huge wooden horse, right? A very large, a giant wooden horse, where the Greek soldiers could hide themselves so that they could sort of steal uh, into the impregnable walls of Troy. So that's over, and then the Odyssey then starts with when the Greek soldiers are scattered. It focuses on Odysseus, right? So Odysseus, his wanderings, and his men. He had a fleet of 12 ships. He ends up losing them all, and he alone ends up at home. So I'm going to get into a series of the narratives. So the Odyssey is kind of interesting because it's a series of it's stories embedded within a story. So the Odyssey is a large story that's being told by the Greek poet Homer, but inside that large story, there's several different stories, right, of Odysseus's encounters and other settings as well. Because when he's left home, there's also the scenes of his family he's left behind, his wife Penelope and her suitors, and how they eat. Um, they eat his heir, his son Telemachus, out of house and home, out of home and house, or whatever, however it goes. I love the phrase so much, and I like to quote it. It's interesting that because the of course the version of the Odyssey that I read is an English translation, so that's actually an English phrase. And so we do not know if Homer actually said it that way, or it was a device used by the English narrators, right, in their translation of the Odyssey. In any event, what I want to do today is I'm going to just give one of the scenes. I'm going to describe one of the narratives within the overarching narrative of the Odyssey. And these narratives, they're about his experiences, the adventures of Odysseus. And this particular one I'm going to describe is the his encounter. That's Odysseus and his men's encounter with the Cyclops Polyphemus, right? And because this is what actually triggers, it's what sets off the curse. Because Odysseus wandered for 10 years, right, around the seas, and he's lost for 10 years, and has these strange encounters because he's been cursed by the Greek god of the sea, uh, uh, Poseidon. And if anybody's not familiar with the Olympians, by the way, let me just give a quick narrative of the Olympians. My chair is a bit crickety as you can hear it, creak as I move. So the Olympians, the Greeks, their gods were the Olympians. They lived on Mount Olympus, right? And Zeus was the king of the gods, was their king. And of course, he had his brothers. If anybody's seen Clash of the Titans, his brother was Poseidon. Poseidon is one of his brothers, and they normally have their conflicts. But the Poseidon is god of the seas, and one of the main characters in uh, Homer's epics is, of course, Helen of Troy. She features in the Odyssey as well, although she has a small part. But she's the one. She's a catalyst for the Trojan War, the Iliad, right? So she's actually a daughter. Even though she's in human form, she's actually a daughter of Zeus, right? She's a daughter of Zeus, Because Zeus likes the gods like to sometimes they like to mate with humans that they find attractive. They did that every now and they'd have a kid that was a demigod or something like that. Like Achilles, Achilles' mother was a goddess, right? And his father was a human being, a king. It's interesting that Zeus had been interested in Achilles' mother. He had found her attractive, and another god they were interested, but a diviner told them that the daughter of that the child that is uh, the child of Thetis. That's a goddess that was very attractive that Zeus wanted. That her child was destined to destroy whoever, right? To destroy whoever, be it like a destroyer of whoever the father was or something like that, some kind of prophecy. And that was what prompted Zeus not to marry her, mate with her, because it would be like it would be suicide. The child would end up killing him. So what he did was he arranged her marriage to King Peleus, a human king, and that's how Achilles was born. And there's a story of she that's Thetis. She tried to make Achilles completely immortal, and so she held him by his ankle, right, and by the heel, and dipped him in the mystic divine, the sort of divine river Styx to make him immortal. But the portion that she was holding him by was not touched by immortality, so he remained. It remained human, and it was his weakness, and that's of course the Achilles heel. That's where Paris shot him through the arrow, and that's what led to his demise. He actually features in the Odyssey as well. He's seen in the underworld. But today, what I'm going to do is just discuss the story of the Cyclops. That's Odysseus's encounter with the Cyclops. So the Cyclops um, was a son of Poseidon, right? It was a son of Poseidon. He wasn't a god himself, so he was deformed. He was a giant. He had just one eye. He was a giant with just one eye. He was a child of Poseidon, and so Odysseus, their ship wanders and everything, and so he swept. Their ship is swept off to the harbor at the island of the Cyclops, right? And so they go in, they find this gigantic cave, and they find the Cyclops supplies. They don't know who's living there. They see his cheese and things like that, and so Odysseus and his men suggest that they should just steal the cheese and the food and run off with it. But Odysseus, they had these rules, these ancient customs of hospitality, right, amongst the Greeks at the time, and so it was a huge thing amongst the Greeks. In fact, the whole narrative, the story of the Odyssey is about violations of this hospitality. If you can actually see the themes, right, and in fact, Homer's epics, the same thing with Iliad, right? Iliad, which tells the story of the Trojan War. It's about the abuse of hospitality. So Odysseus believes that whoever was master of the cave owed them owed them the etiquette, owed them was responsible to them based on the laws of hospitality, and so he decided that they should wait and meet the master of the cave. So when the master of the cave, the giant Cyclops, one-eyed Cyclops, Polyphemus, he returns and he realizes there are people there, right? So he he has this huge rock. He uses this huge rock to blockade the mouth of the cave, or the entrance. He blocks them in, and he sees the men, two of them. Immediately, he grabs two of them, knocks them out, kills them, and he eats them. He's a giant, and he eats them. Right? That's not being hospitable at all. At all. So Odysseus and his men realize they're trapped because the cave is locked and they can't exit. But Odysseus, again, he's known as Odysseus of the nimble wits. He's very cunning. He's very crafty. He's the craftiest of the Greek heroes, right? He's the most clever, the most, he's very intelligent, right? And he defeats his enemies through his intelligence, his cunning intelligence, and he's proud of this cunning intelligence, right? So he decides, okay, he starts to strategize how to escape, how to defeat the Cyclops in his own in his own lair, right? He's in the Cyclops, territory, in his own turf, right? And the Cyclops is a giant, obviously stronger than them, So the Cyclops now had a habit. He'd take two of the men, right? He'd feast on them, and he'd lock them in, and he'd go out. So the Cyclops had these sheep as well, right? These giant sheep, because he's a giant, the Cyclops. He just had them locked in. He was holding them hostage, so they were just going to be his meals, right? His dinner or whatever, whenever he came back. So Odysseus and his men had wine. They had wine, and so he tricks the Cyclops. So he starts flattering the Cyclops. So Odysseus is also a flatterer. He's a manipulator. He's got the gift of gab, and so he's talking, he manipulates, he would start praising the Cyclops about his strength and everything. Meanwhile, the Cyclops is unmoved. He realizes that obviously Odysseus is just flattering him, looking for a way to escape. And this Cyclops is resolved. He's calm. He's like, okay, don't worry, I'm going to eat you later on. I'm going to eat you, feast on you as well later on. So Odysseus manipulates him to taste their wine, right? And the Cyclops had never tried wine. So the Cyclops drank the wine, and and so when he drank the wine, um, he likes it. So Odysseus plies him with plenty of wine, deceiving him. So the Cyclops drinks plenty of wine, drinks a lot of wine, and so the Cyclops is happy. And so the Cyclops now asks Odysseus. This is the version from the film Ulysses of 1954. I remember he said this. I can't quite remember if it's in the book, right? If this is some kind of um, uh, artistic liberty, right? But in the film, the 1954 version of the Odyssey, titled Ulysses, right? Again, Ulysses is the same as Odysseus. Ulysses is the Latin, the Roman translation of his name of Odysseus, right? Because the Romans would, they revered Greek literature, Greek classics, and so they would literally translate, make Roman equivalents of Greek civilization, Greek culture, Greek heroes, and whatnot. So um, in that version, uh, yeah, the Cyclops, right, is impressed. He likes the wine. He's getting drunk. He likes the wine, and so he asks. Um, he says, well, he likes Odysseus, so he doesn't know Odysseus's name. So he asked for Odysseus's name. So he said that for his reward for giving him all that wine, which he likes. The Cyclops likes a lot of wine. He's going to eat Odysseus last. He'll save him to the end because he's been giving him all this wine and he likes it. So he asks Odysseus what Odysseus's name is, and you can see how Odysseus thinks. He's very he thinks on his feet. Odysseus tells him, "Oh, his name is Nobody," right? So you see him telling a lie. He tells him his name is Nobody, and so the Cyclops believes him, right? He says, "Oh, good, Nobody. Thank you so much, Nobody." And so he sleeps. When the Cyclops is asleep, Odysseus had already planned with his men to make a sharpened steak. They sharpened the steak, right, and they heat it up. They heat the sharpened steak, and then they plunge it into his eye, the one eye of the Cyclops while he's asleep. So they blind him. So he's screaming and screaming and screaming. He can't see because he's now blind. He can't see, and so he can't see. He's screaming and screaming, and then his neighbors, other Cyclops, because they're Cyclops in the land, on the island. His neighbors hear him from outside, and so they're trying to come, and they're asking, "What's going on? Who's hurting you? Who's hurting you?" And he's just shouting, "Nobody, nobody's hurting me. Nobody, because he thinks Odysseus's name is nobody. So he's trying to tell them nobody's trying to, instead of saying Odysseus is hurting me, he's saying nobody's hurting me. So the Cyclops interpreted that, okay, he doesn't have any problem. There's nothing going on. He's not hurt. He's just drunk and he's just shouting for, gratuitously. And so the Cyclops don't help him. They go away. They don't help him. And so he's all alone and he's screaming and screaming. And so Odysseus has another crafty plan. He decides, because he's trying to feel for the men, right? He knows the feeling for the men. Now the Cyclops has a habit. He lets his sheep out so they can just go out and graze or whatever. He lets them out of the cave, and then at the end of the day, he takes them back in. So Odysseus and his men, they tie themselves around the sheep under around the underbelly of the sheep, so he can't feel them, because the Cyclops is just feeling on their top, their heads, right? He can feel their woolly head, and then he lets them out. So they're under, so he can't. So that he can't feel them. He doesn't. He thinks the men are still there. So he rolls away the heavy stone, the heavy rock, because the men couldn't roll the rock, because it was a massive rock, right? Stone. So he rolls it out, and then he opens the entrance, and the sheep pass, but the men are wrapped under the sheep, right? So that's how the men escape. Right, that's how they escape the Cyclops from the captivity of the Cyclops. His name is Polyphemus, and so when they escape, they get into their ship. Um, he's wailing. He's still wailing. Odysseus now, he wanted him. He was in his fit of hubris. Yeah, that's another thing about Odysseus, right? He has that bravado, and in the film 1954 film of Ulysses, right? Kirk Douglas depicts this bravado very well, right? He's explosive, he's brash. Uh, Instead of Odysseus being humble and just being gratified that, okay, they had escaped and they were safe and they should just move on, because it was a master, uh, it was masterful, right? That it was brilliant that he had misled the Cyclops by giving him a false name, saying his name is nobody. So the Cyclops doesn't know who it is who harmed him. But Odysseus, in his arrogance, right? Odysseus now wanted him to know, right? Once they got into the ship, he wanted him to know that, okay, it was Odysseus who hurt him. It was Odysseus who destroyed him. And then he shouts, he tells him, he's showing off, right? That was sort of another honor code of the Greeks back then, right? They liked being honorable, they liked to be celebrated. And he's saying you should let everybody know that it was the king of Ithaca, right? Odysseus, the sacker of Troy. He sacked Troy, right? He was one who came up with the brilliant idea of the Trojan horse to defeat Troy. The sacker of Troy, the destroyer of cities, right? The destroyer of cities, Odysseus, the king of Ithaca, right? So he's shouting, and so um, that's how the Cyclops Polyphemus got to know Odysseus's name. Of course, he's throwing these heavy rocks, trying to hit them with the heavy rocks, and Odysseus is taunting him, and some of his men are lost, but Odysseus, just wants him to know that he's the one who bested him, but um, to his peril, now the Cyclops knows who harmed him. So the Cyclops appeals to his father, Poseidon, who's a god, right? Poseidon is a god. And he appeals to him that, okay, this is what Odysseus has done to him. He blinded him and he destroyed him by blinding his eye. And so Poseidon now has Odysseus's name. Poseidon then curses Odysseus, right? He curses him to wander the seas. The idea was for him to wander the seas eternally, right? He wanders, he's wandering around the seas, he's lost, and that's how he has the series of his encounters that almost kill him, that caused him to lose all his men. All his men died. Eventually, he's the only one who was able to make it back home. I'll discuss the other narratives, the other stories in other videos, but that's the story of Odysseus's encounter with Polyphemus, the Cyclops, who was the son of Poseidon, and which led to Odysseus being cursed to wander the seas. My name is Olurotimi Osha. I'll keep you posted.